On a scale of 1 to 10, how racist is America?
10, because like the things they do, the rules they place is clearly like planned out against like certain races.
7. You can look at Jackson, Mississippi. There's a water crisis going on right now, and the government hasn't done anything about it so far.
A 9 because it's not overtly, but it's always there. It always exists.
Yeah, I would have to say 10 too, because like we still got police brutality.
You know, it's very sad to see young people, especially minorities, who really have this anti-American attitude to the point where they believe, you know, America's like the worst place to be ever. And I think it's really part of the media that pushes this narrative. And, you know, I can't blame people, you know, to talk about things like police brutality, but these affect all races, not just minorities. You know, actually, if you look at statistics, more white people are shot unarmed than minorities. And there's racial biases in the criminal justice system, which I definitely think we need a reform, right? Because it's dominated by money and the whole thing, you know, like getting bailed out, you have money, and if you can't bail yourself out, you're going to get a worse sentence statistically and all this stuff. But the largest bias really just comes down to just being a man. I think it's something like 70-80% of men receive a 70 to 80% heavier sentence for the same crimes versus women. Now that bias, you know, deepens when we are looking specifically at, you know, different races, but the biggest difference is just male female. Are we looking at that, trying to dismantle that? I mean, are there, you know, protests in the street bringing up that bias? No, but people bring up the race one constantly, you know, when it's a tiny, like, you know, 5%, 10% difference, but there's a 80% difference between the sexes. You see where I'm going this? But anyway, you know, I digress. You know, I definitely think we need a reform. We need more accountability for police. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. But to specifically address, you know, is America the most racist country in the world? Of course not. America is actually one of the most tolerant places in the entire world. A lot of the countries we look at, or at least liberals and Dems look at, like, you know, Finland and Greenland and Sweden. These are actually, well, not Sweden, but Finland recently topped number 1 in Europe as the most racist country in Europe. Why? Because these are very homogeneous countries. They don't have a lot of diversity, and they have a lot of social programs. And I've noticed that if you have strong social safety nets, strong social programs, free healthcare, your population there tends to not like immigration, because illegal immigration or lax laws on immigration, they come in and then they're using those resources. That's one thing people don't get about Europe, and I digress a little bit, but Europe has VAT. Most countries in Europe, 20%. So everything is 20% more expensive right off the bat. And also, they don't have a lot of taxation system like we have here. If you make under a certain amount, if you're making 20 grand a year, 15,000 a month, you're not paying federal taxes. You might have to pay a little local, a little state, but you're overall, like, you're not paying any taxes. In Europe, everybody's paying taxes. You make 500 euros a year, they're taking their cut in taxes. And it's higher rates from the get-go than here in the United States. So you're getting less. But anyway, here is an actual world map that is based on a survey. So essentially, they did an anonymous survey, and they asked people if there was any race that they wouldn't want to be their neighbor. So it's interesting, right? Because it was anonymous, people tend to answer truthfully. Now, you'll notice that the dark blue is more tolerant, right? So from dark blue to dark red. The dark blue is a 0 to 4.9% of people answered that there was a specific race they would not want to be their neighbor. You'll notice Canada and the United States are amongst the most tolerant places in the world. Pretty much the only countries in that 0 to 4.9%, you could say prejudiced people, is Canada, United States, what is that, Brazil, Peru, or Chile, and we have Australia, New Zealand. Everywhere else is not as tolerant. You know, you have Mexico is hitting up at, you know, 10%. I think that's, what is that, Guatemala, or is it Costa Rica? That's funny because I just saw another list that was talking about how Costa Rica was a pretty prejudiced place for people of African descent. And again, you know, like I see, Norway is over there saying it's more tolerant. But again, I think the 0 to 4%, like just saying if someone, you don't want them to be your neighbor, isn't really the most accurate of representations. But one surprising one, India, a country that might not jump to your mind as being racist, is actually amongst the most racist out there. Now, I think it's just people are open about this kind of stuff. A lot of Asian countries are very prejudiced. They don't really have a culture in which it's a taboo to have prejudice. People are openly racist, openly discriminatory. Europe, like in Italy where I was raised and I grew up, you know, they don't have as many laws to say you can't hire or you have to hire. They don't have quotas. You can fire somebody because they're a minority. You can, you know, not hire somebody because they're a minority. You can not give somebody a place to live because they're a minority. It's okay. Nobody's going to say anything. Same thing in Asia. Like, we really have incredibly progressive laws that try to protect all people. But anyway, you know, the UK is up there, is also pretty tolerant. Hey, the point of the matter, South Africa. See, South Africa is crazy racist, but they got not a bad rating. So I don't know how much I trust this survey specifically. The point is there's nothing wrong in trying to improve your own country and seeing its faults, right? But the new generation, and I think it's a big part of like the media push, the media is pushing this narrative that the United States is just a shithole. And it makes me sad. It makes me sad as someone who has traveled around. And it's like, it's very tough. If I had to choose another place where I wanted to live, it would be very hard to find, because every place has its positive and its negatives. Whether that be like, oh, I'm just going to go pack up and live in Switzerland or Dubai or wherever. It's like, you know, you think you want to live there, but once you get there, you realize that it is not what you thought. So all this taking a knee and talking trash about the United States, it just makes me sad, because you're only going to appreciate it once it's gone. And that's what I fear, that a lot of these policies, they're trying to turn the United States into one of these failing European countries. Once we get there and we realize it's going to shit, it's going to be too late. It's going to be too late. You can't turn back. So that's what worries me. Anyway, what do you guys think? Have any of you guys lived internationally? What do you think about these kind of surveys or these interviews? And the interview, I cut it short, but it went on. I mean, this is how the average college kid that's on college campus, these interviews, thinks that the United States is among the most racist countries in the world. That's the sentiment. I don't know. Thank you guys for watching. As always, buy red and sell green.